If you've only just begun paying attention to U.S. foreign policy and Western media bias in light of Israel's destruction of Gaza and Biden's act of war against Yemen, it's important to understand that none of the depravity you're seeing is new. The lies, the insane double standards, the murderousness. The Western political media class always does this. Every war the U.S. involves itself in is always facilitated by lies promulgated in one voice by the official government in Washington and by the, quote, independent, quote, free press, actually propaganda services of the Western world. They deceived the world about Ukraine. They deceived the world about Yemen. They deceived the world about Syria, Libya, and Iraq. There are always lies, obfuscations, and manipulations involved in marketing a new war to the public, or in hiding its involvement in foreign wars from public attention. All of this manipulation and deceit is necessary to hide the fact that the U.S. centralized empire is the most tyrannical power structure on this planet. And make no mistake, it is an empire. Washington serves as the hub of an undeclared empire comprised of alliances, partnerships, assets, public deals, and secret agreements, which knit a large number of nations together into what functions as a single power structure with regard to international affairs. Most of the beneficiaries of this power structure reside in the West or global North, while the most exploited and abused victims of this power structure tend to reside in the East or global South. There are all sorts of rules and regulations and narratives and justifications for why this all happens the way it happens, but if you mentally mute the soundtrack on this verbal overlay and just look at what's actually happening, what you will see is the lion's share of the world's wealth and resources moving northward and westward from populations of a darker average skin tone toward populations of a paler average skin tone. Wherever that movement is hindered, diverted, threatened, or inconvenienced, you will see Western war machinery moving southward and eastward to get it back on the desired track. Most major international conflicts can be understood as either direct or indirect efforts by the U.S. empire to shore up planetary domination, which are often met with resistance by populations who wish to retain their sovereignty. Much of this conflict happens in the Middle East because that's where the world gets a lot of its oil from, with U.S.-aligned nations like Israel and Saudi Arabia frequently serving as the front line for hostilities with non-U.S.-aligned nations like Iran and Syria, as well as non-U.S.-aligned forces like Hezbollah, Ansar Allah, and Hamas. This struggle for U.S. planetary hegemony is disguised by the Western political media class as something other than what it is, because you can't allow the public in a democratic nation to understand clearly that their government is on the side of evil. They'll frame it as a U.S.-led international coalition to liberate a nation from a tyrannical dictator, as a humanitarian intervention to protect human rights, as support for Israel's right to defend itself, as protection of freedom of navigation in the Red Sea. But what's actually happening is the world's most powerful and murderous power structure killing human beings in Western Asia in order to secure control over a crucial resource. You see this all over the world against nations which refuse to allow themselves to be absorbed into the U.S. centralized power structure like North Korea, Venezuela, and Cuba, with China being by far the strongest of these and Russia a distant second. And you will notice that you have heard every nation I just mentioned cast in a very negative light by the Western press over the years. This is not a coincidence. You don't need to believe anything I'm saying on faith. If you just keep in mind what I said and start watching the patterns for yourself while seeking out the truth day by day, you will see it for yourself. You will see the same patterns emerging over and over again, year after year. Over and over again, you will see the U.S. and the states that are aligned with it acting with extreme aggression toward non-U.S. aligned powers in ways that benefit the U.S. centralized power structure. And you will see the Western press deceiving the world about what's happening. The next official bad guy you see dominating Western press coverage on international affairs will be a non-U.S. aligned power. And if you apply diligent research and critical thinking, you will find that they are not presenting an accurate picture of what's happening. Just keep learning and studying the patterns with open curiosity and self-honesty, and the picture will inevitably become clear to you. And then you will see clearly who's really driving the bulk of the violence and disorder in our world.